Good morning, good afternoon, greetings and salutations, good evening. This edition, I've got the most amazing guest today. So basically, I am extremely honoured to be able to welcome the Reverend Calvin Robinson, who is an Anglican deacon based in London and is an experienced and passionate public speaker, media personality, and is dedicated to spreading his message of hope, faith, and positivity to audiences across the globe. He has been featured on many outlets such as the BBC, Fox's Tucker Carlson, and he's got his own show on GB News called Common Sense Crusade, which is an inspiring and thought-provoking hour of discussion. With his unique combination of wisdom, wit, and insight, he hopes to bring a unique perspective on all of the most important issues of our times. I was extremely fortunate to be able to meet Reverend Robinson in person at an event that I did gate crash at Nottingham University. Kindly, I was allowed to gate crash by the student union. And during Calvin's speech, which was extremely inspiring, he did mention Bitcoin. So I asked Calvin whether or not he would like to come on the show, and he graciously accepted. I'm immensely grateful, and I'm very thankful for you giving so generously of your time. So thank you and welcome to this little podcast, Calvin.
Thank you, Diddy. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. It was good to meet you as well in Nottingham.
Thank you very much. Well, it was inspiring, and also something that I didn't know was that you were actually from Mansfield, so you're quite local.
Yeah,
and I saw you doing some archery as well. How did that go?
Oh, that was good fun. Yeah, I went on a holiday with my family, and there was a bit of an archery area, so I went and shot some bow and arrows. Good fun. It reminded me of my childhood because Mansfield is the home, obviously, of Sherwood Forest and Nottinghood country. So we always used to have those rubber-tipped bow and arrows as children.
Well, I'll let you into a little secret. When I was a child, we used to go camping, and we had the Goose Fair, which is a big Michaelmas fair. It started as a Michaelmas fair in the area, and it was a massive caravan event which was held in a village called Caythorpe, and we all used to dress up as Robin Hood, Maid Marian at the time. So that was a lot of fun, climbing hay bales and everything. So that's what we used to do. I'm really interested in how you came into actually wanting to be an Anglican deacon, and I do have my own theory, but I'd really like to hear how that story happened.
I mean, it's a big story, but the summary is that it's a calling to a vocation, and one that I couldn't avoid, no matter how much I wanted to or tried to. I've never been a big believer in organized religion or institutions that are that big, because I think they're often very flawed, and this is obviously because of the original sin, and all men are sinners and make up an institution of men that's bound to be fallen. But so I avoided big institutions for as long as possible, but my faith in Christ is what led me to a realization that I had to have a life dedicated toward him and a life in ministry for him, to serve him and to serve people who believe in him. And that, of course, I'm an Anglican because I'm a Christian in England, and Anglicanism is the English expression of the Christian faith, part of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So it's just the default, really. So I didn't really choose to be Anglican. I was just born this way. But I was ordained a deacon last year as we record this, and God willing, I'll be ordained a priest this year. And I've got a parish ministry, which is where I spend half of my time. And then I spend the other half in my public ministry on television and radio.
You are an extremely busy person, and it wasn't an easy road for you either to be actually get to the position you're in at the moment. I understand you used to be a teacher, and then you've come to, well, you're still teaching really, but it's just in a different way. I wondered how your role as a deacon has impacted the local community around where the church is, because you are really well respected as well. So how does that go?
Thank you. Well, it differs. So we do have people that turn up to church because they've seen my public ministry and they want to be a part of the parish ministry, which is nice. But then, of course, I'm very cautious of that because the focus shouldn't be on me. The focus should be on Jesus Christ, which is why we're there, which is what we're in church for. So I'm very clear on that. But the area that I minister to is a very deprived part of London as well. It's an area that needs a lot of love and attention and has been crying out for it. And it's got broken window syndrome everywhere. You know, Harlesden is just down the road from where I've lived for most of my adult life, actually. But everywhere around Harlesden has been gentrified. But Harlesden kind of got left behind in the gentrification process. So people, a lot of people in Harlesden feel left behind, neglected. So it's part of my mission as one of the local ministers there to try and have an impact and remind people that we own the area. It's our area, it's our community, and we are the ones that have to make a difference. We can't wait for the government or anyone else to come in and fix it. We have to fix things ourselves.
Yeah.
That element of personal responsibility, I'm very enthusiastic about.
That's cool. So just making sure that people realize that they are responsible for themselves really as well. And actually, like you say, we can't rely on the government. We've kind of found that out, really quite a lot recently with in the last couple of years. What kind of message do you feel that is really important that you'd like to take, to give to your congregation, to take away from your ministry?
Well, the good news that we always have hope. We have hope of eternal life because Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins and was resurrected for our salvation. And that means that if we renounce our sins and have faith in him, then we have eternal life in him. And that's something that's amazing. That doesn't matter how crappy the world around us gets, how totalitarian the government gets, or how monstrous this new one world government becomes, we always have hope and faith in Jesus Christ.
Faith is such a strong, it is just so strong. I mean, I don't know if you know of this, I've been watching a program called The Chosen, and there's been over 457.5 million views on The Chosen so far, and it's such a beautifully shot and well constructed kind of series about Jesus and the faith. And it was, for me, I watched this recently, and it did really kind of remind me of how much faith you can have in being able to pull yourself out of dark space. So that, it within itself is something that I find phenomenal. My theory was, because and this is probably completely wrong, about you wanting to be an Anglican deacon, was because of Richard Sterene. I don't know if you know of him. From 1596 to 1683, he was the King's Bishop, and he was actually based in Mansfield, and he became a Doctor of Divinity. So I kind of wondered whether or not that had any impact on your teaching, being from Mansfield and kind of wanting to go in the direction that you have done.
No, I'll have to look up Richard Sterene. I don't know anything about him. I didn't really find Christ until I left Mansfield, unfortunately. But I do have to say I love The Chosen. I think it's fantastic. I'm up to date, so awesome. I'm waiting for the finale of season 3 of series 3 to come out. I liked how they were releasing it on Sundays as well. Very good. Although, obviously, they didn't release anything yesterday as we record, because I think the finale comes out, is it next week? Double episode whammy.
It's going to be in theatres, and I tried to get a ticket, but unfortunately it's not in Nottingham at the moment. So I was like,
it's America, isn't it?
Yeah, that is something I was a little bit disappointed of myself, to be honest with you. Yeah, what a phenomenal series. And if
I watched the Bible miniseries a while ago. That was good. But since that, I think The Chosen is probably the best biblical series that's ever been produced.
I completely agree with you. I really do agree with you. It's just spellbound, and if nobody's seen it who's watching this, I really recommend that you actually go and see it. There is an app that you can download as well called The Chosen app, which is on Google and iPhone, and you can watch it all for free. Do a bit of a catch up on it. I also have a question about how and what inspired you to get involved with GB News. How did that all come about?
That's a good question, Diddy. So as you mentioned, I was a teacher before, and I love education. It's actually my passion. And I do agree with you that I'm still a teacher, just a different type of teacher now, because I realized that tertiary education was only part of my calling, and the pastor and the priesthood was another part of it too. But while I was a teacher, I was writing about what I was seeing in education, and just writing it because that's how I reflect on my practice, on improving as a teacher, but also because I was concerned about a lot of stuff I was seeing. Actually, I wanted to let people know. And it started to get picked up by local media and then by national media. And eventually people started asking me for my opinions, specifically on education. And then they started asking my opinions on race when BLM kicked off during lockdowns. And then people just started asking for my opinions on general issues. But while this was happening, I was just trying to remain truthful, as I always do, try to remain as truthful as possible and try to spread the good news while I'm given it whatever platform I'm given. Because I always think that if I'm given a platform, it's a gift from God for his purposes, not for my own purposes. Because I've no ambition to be famous or to be a TV presenter or anything, any of those things. It's just literally using the platforms as best I can for the greater glory of God. However, after a while of being a contributor and commentator, I reached a point where I was being offered presenter roles in a couple of different outlets, and some of the outlets were appealing to my sins. So a few outlets were appealing to pride and vanity, like, we'll make you a big star and stuff like that. And they've really turned me off because I think it's to be avoided. And the guys at GB News said, look, we get it. You're on a mission. Here's a platform. Use this platform and go with it. And, it's not always easy. And there are many battles there, as there are anywhere. However, it's been fantastic that the platform they've given me and the ability to preach the gospel and also just stand up for good old-fashioned common sense values and British values. I couldn't ask for anything better.
No, completely. I always call you the voice of reason, to be honest with you, because I do watch your show on a Sunday. Not always on a Sunday, though. I do have to catch up. But the thing about you is you're really passionate, and everything that you say comes from the heart, and you believe completely in what you're saying. And I think that's one of the things that comes over more than anything as well. So if people haven't seen Common Sense Crusade, please go over to GB News and go and watch Common Sense Crusade on a Sunday, because it's a phenomenal program. Now, I had a background in theatre. I was a sound and lighting technician and then show manager and production manager. But I did start off as a child. I was a child model in bridesmaids dresses, and I did a bit of acting. And I must admit, I love acting. I absolutely love it because I love Shakespeare and I love stuff like that. But I do understand completely where you're coming from, because I would never want to do the famous Hollywood thing either. It's not kind of anything that I'm interested in. But I did do like acting in hotels and things, and that was really fun, just entertaining and just seeing people smile, I think, is one of the best things. And knowing that they've had a really good time and they thoroughly enjoyed just seeing you perform is something that
there are many people out there that do want to just be TV presenters, or it is a career ambition, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm happy for them, but for me, it's about encouraging people and giving people permission to be themselves. I think there are a lot of people in this country who share my opinions and share my values, but don't feel they can necessarily do so publicly. So every time I do so, I give them permission to do so too. I encourage them to do so. I think that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
What do you think is the most important message then that you want your audience to take away from the show?
I suppose be true to yourself and be true to the Lord. And, there are many people that are encouraging us to lie these days, whether it's on trans issues or feminist issues, or it doesn't really matter what the issue is. Wokeness has kind of encouraged lies in the public square. And most people know in their hearts what is true. And they know there is a universal truth, and that we don't own the truth. So I think just encouraging people to be true, and to remind themselves of the transcendentals of truth, goodness, and beauty, and they are the things that are important in life.
Do you think? I mean, there's a thing called the noble lie, which is something that politicians are known to have used for a very long time. Do you think that is something that's actually, this noble lie that was used in politics has kind of spread in a very toxic way? Or, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth in any way, but,
I don't know, Diddy. I think there is something to be said about a noble lie or a white lie. I mean, I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but I don't lie.
Well, same here.
Sometimes I find it. I think it's a strength, but I think it's probably also a weakness, because I think there are times when it's helpful to lie, but I just don't. I can't do it. I don't do it.
If you lie, it's going to come back and bite you in the butt at some point, you know. And there's also a kind of little saying about, you know, lies destroy lives, and they actually do when you actually look into and go really deep down that rabbit hole. Again, I mean, I might get things wrong, but I
Exactly.
don't necessarily lie about things, you
Yeah.
know. And if I am wrong, I will admit that I'm wrong. Because I know as well that you've been to Davos recently,
Mm.
and that was in conjunction with was it Rebel News? So you were there for GB News, but it was also with Rebel News.
I was there for myself. I went there independently. Rebel News gave me a sofa to sleep on. Very kind of them, lovely guys, and they crowdfunded their entire trip. So they basically crowdfunded me as well, which is so kind of them. GB News didn't want to send anyone; they didn't send me, so I just went out independently. Thankfully, I
Okay,
did manage to get some of my content on my show.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's so important to get out there because no one's there. Rebel News were the only media company really that were there. Sky News did do a piece where they chased down Boris, but you'll notice they only did this after the Rebel News pieces had already gone out of Rebel News chasing the boss of Pfizer and the boss of AstraZeneca, and
yeah,
Tony Blair and Larry Fink, the boss of BlackRock. Once they'd all gone out and gone viral, Sky News were like, "Oh, we've got to do something," and they chased Boris Johnson down. And all they asked him was, "Why is Rishi not here? Why are you here?" I mean, great journalism, guys.
yeah.
Other than that, no journalists were reporting from Davos, but there were loads of journalists there. The Washington
That's
Post was there, the Times, the Telegraph, New York Times, all these companies were there. So what are they there for if they're not reporting?
and like you say, I mean, they weren't asking questions well, at least they weren't asking questions in any way whatsoever. They're just there to kind of repeat what they've seen and put that out there as propaganda media. Like for me, it seems that you're really busy. So the fact that you actually got to take time out to actually go over there as well, because how long were you there? A couple of days?
I was there for the entire week. Made it back in
And
time for church, but other than that, yeah, I was there the entire time.
so how do you manage your time?
I don't. I really don't. Um, it's a thing I struggle with. I have this need to always feel like I'm being productive, and I know you have to set time aside for socialization and for rest, otherwise you get burnt out. So I'm very aware of it. It doesn't mean I'm very good at it.
Right, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is something that we do struggle with sometimes. Yeah, definitely, I agree. But going back to Davos, I mean, obviously a lot of this is based around the World Economic Forum. So when it comes to economics, this is where like I'm really interested in how you heard about Bitcoin and what it is that you know about Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, I knew about Bitcoin years ago. I was mining it back in the day when you still
Oh, you
could.
really?
Yeah. I don't. I've tried to look for that wallet a lot of times. I don't know if I had anything, but if I did, it would probably be worth something. Well, maybe not now, but it
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
worth something. But I mined Monero for a while. I do think decentralized currencies are the future. I think Bitcoin is fantastic. I'm very, very weary of people who say Bitcoin is the answer because they say it to everything, and it's becoming a bit of a cult, to be honest. And people need to be aware of that. But it does answer a lot of questions, and it is a fantastic thing. And digital currencies are good, but can also be bad. And this was the great thing about being at Davos, in that I saw that the two main topics of conversation at the WEF this year were, of
Hmm.
course, the climate so-called crisis or emergency, and digital currencies. And we know that governments want to implement their own central bank digital currencies because then they
Yeah,
control them. And if they control the money, they control us. It's very simple.
yeah.
Um, and I think we have,
Interestingly enough, the government have just put an advert out for I think it was like
there's
I can't
four
remember
jobs
his name.
out there.
There was one for like head of central bank digital currency for the bank, you know, with the Bank of England through the government.
Yeah,
It's
we've got
interesting what you
head of
say
central
because
bank digital currency, policy advisor, central bank digital currency, senior
yeah,
policy advisor, central bank digital currency. They're advertising these jobs like they're already going to create a central bank digital currency. We haven't been
exactly.
consulted on that.
Exactly. So while we're on the topic of Bitcoin, because there are free Bitcoins, and I do want to kind of put a record straight about what is what, we are joined by Joel Daly. And Joel Daly is somebody that's been in the Bitcoin space for a very, very long time. And he has a website which is called the Metanet ICU, and it's basically a membership site where a lot of education takes place. Now, for me, first off, I came across Bitcoin in about 2016, and I really wanted to kind of understand what it was because I didn't have a clue about anything. And I thought the only way I'm going to understand it is if I find out who invented it and follow the inventor and learn from him. So I came across this channel called Theory of Bitcoin, which is an educational channel. And on there were 50 hours of video education with Dr. Craig Wright, who's the inventor of Bitcoin, talking about why he decided to invent it and what it did and all the theory and everything. And then there's further videos where he goes through every single line of the Bitcoin white paper and explains every single line in full detail. So there's hundreds of hours of learning on there. Because of that, I kind of then jumped down this rabbit hole and got involved in sort of learning more and more and learning directly from Craig. And then I met Joel. And Joel has very kindly let me into the Metanet ICU. And at the moment, we're doing a philosophy course, which is with Craig. And I'm helping with the philosophy course. But I really like to sort of just about Bitcoin SV, because there's BTC, which is, as we see on social media and Twitter, all the people with the laser eyes. And then there's BCH, which is Roger Ver's coin. And then there's BSV. I'm intrigued to kind of know, what your understanding of those coins are, because you said to me, like, welcome Joel, and Calvin, Joel, and Calvin's just told me that he used to mine Bitcoin.
Nice. What, with ASACs, GPU?
Wow.
GPU,
GPU days. So you're old school as well.
Well, this is it. I've tried to find my old computer and tried to find that hard drive just in case there's a wallet on there. I don't know if there will be, but
can you imagine if there was and you did find it as well? I mean, how
tomorrow?
It'd be amazing, yeah.
But in terms of nano and that kind of stuff, I think that's important. So for me, the problem with Bitcoin and all digital currencies at the moment is they are not convenient. In the UK, for example, contactless payments are the norm now. Cash payments make up less than 20% of all payments at the moment. Contactless is the norm because it's so convenient to go in there with your card or your phone, just go boop, and you're done, right?
Yeah.
In America, they're catching up, but a couple of years ago, the last time I went to America before lockdown, it wasn't everywhere. It wasn't unanimous. I think post-lockdown, it probably is because they've used lockdowns to push these contactless systems. However, to go anywhere and pay in Bitcoin, we know is harder work because people don't have access to it in the same way. There are lots of different ways to have wallets. There are lots of different ways to implement it. And also it's the speed at which transactions take place. With something like Thunder or with a way of having transactions that are faster than is currently the norm would make a big difference.
The difference is like there's the sending a transaction and then there's settlement. And so as the traditional system checks and such, as probably know, checks and such takes 2-3 weeks to settle. Normal bank transfer, even though the UK does have the world's only FPS system and it is the best in the world, it still takes, I can't remember how long now, 10 days or something for it to settle. So we do an FPS transaction, it appears in your bank pretty much 10-15 minutes, which is still slower, I say, but that's just the initial payment, and then the settlement comes afterwards, where banks, dot their I's and cross the T's. Yeah. So with Bitcoin, we're talking like, and by Bitcoin I do mean BSV. We're talking fractions of a second for that initial transaction. Then the settlement is the block time. So, which can take anywhere from a minute, 30 seconds, which you probably know all this anyway, but for the wider audience, 30 seconds to maybe sometimes an hour. But that's for settlement, which is only really needed if you're doing like £1 million transaction, or you're buying yacht or something like that, and the recipient's like, I just want to make sure your money's going through okay. But otherwise, for small shopping transactions or even global transactions, that's the key thing, because like national transactions, they have the, as I said, FPS, brilliant system. But for global transactions and Forex systems, it takes so much longer to send and to settle. Is even longer. But Bitcoin, being the ledger that it is, it takes fractions of a second to initially send and to receive, and then the settlement comes much later. And the key thing as well is the security of the level of security on the settlement, which is something like 99.97 and goes on in fractions after that. And then obviously it gets harder to disrupt that the more blocks that stack on top of the first block.
So that answers the speed, but how do we answer the convenience?
Convenience is a thing that businesses need to build. This is in part why I cheerleaded Paymail. I don't know if you've heard of Paymail. No. Never heard. Okay, so Paymail was something I discussed with Ryan X. Charles, who did the Theory of Bitcoin. He hosted that years ago. And basically the idea is that you have a static address shaped like an email, and underneath that static address you have a constant changing variable, which is the long code address, which everyone is used to. So mine is Joel. Mine could be joel@dale.org, which is also the same as my email address, which I probably shouldn't say out live, but don't matter. But that's one of my email addresses, I'll just say. But that can be also your static payment address. And people send to that, and underneath the hood, it constantly changes the long code. So that's for privacy. And that's for ease of use. So any family member or shop can have that static payment address, or notably a big business like Tesco's might have support at tesco.com for their static paymail address, or refunds at Tesco. And if you are not getting the at Tesco domain name as part of the Paymail, it's at Tescop or something, then obviously you're sending to the wrong place, which is a lot easier to notice that than it is like a static a long code address, which someone might just change it or just give you a random one. You can actually check, a email type payment address. And this is also being patented as well by Enchain and Moneybutton as well. So they have started copying BTC, the Lightning Network. I have noticed they've started copying this idea, but they're not doing it right. They're using a static email address over a static long code address, which defeats the purpose of privacy. If you've got a constant long code address, and then everyone can see what's going on in that address. But if you've got a constant changing variable, and then they're not going to know. But it's also on the side of the user, if say like the tax office comes along, or the shop turns around and you're trying to give a refund, and the shop says proof that you brought that. If you've got the static email address, I can say like, here, I'm Joel at this. You can see my payments this. I can send you another fraction of a cent or whatever to show you that I am that person. And also the interesting thing as well, once you have the static on top of a variable, you can then tie an identity to that static address if you want to. So you can take some extra steps. A business can get involved, and you could then prove yourself as, I am Calvin Robinson at this address. This is me, and that's my proof of identity. And then you can get, multiple paymails from different sites.
Yeah. So I was going to say there's a really cool wallet that I use a lot, and it's called Handcash. And I've got friends in the US, and I've got some. Basically, there's a little boy that I know that calls me mom, and he lives in Nigeria. So I can send him money via Handcash to Handcash or Sempy wallet, and it'll take literally, I can send him £10 and it takes a fraction of a second to get there, and it costs me like less than 1,000th of a cent to send it. But the beautiful thing about be is that it would be whoever at sentb.com, and they have gift cards, so you could use the monetary value of the BSV on a gift card and go into shops like Walmart and you can spend that. That's phenomenal. But the other thing I've got is hand cash, and with hand cash I've just got a $ Diddy, and that is my handle. So I've got a handle, so anybody else who's on using hand cash can just send money that way. So that again is, I am not as technical in any way whatsoever as what Joel is, but for me that's how you get around the long addresses and making it simple for the user. Is you have just this nice little wallet, you can buy within the wallet, you don't need an exchange, and I've just got a $ that says Diddy, and anybody who wants to send me anything, or if I want to buy anything, I just use my hand cash handle, and that's tied to a PayMail address as well. So is that something that you already know about, Calvin?
No, but I mean, all these things are great. The problem I see is that there are too many different solutions. And as simple as they might seem to people who are using them, it's not as simple as just going with my phone and typing something. There needs.
I was just going.
Oh, well, it is actually. So with my
wallet out for that.
Yeah. So with my hand cash, I can literally do exactly that. So there is so I can just scan a barcode and then just barcode to barcode, and that's exactly
your PayMail for hand cash is just Diddy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just hand cash Diddy.
Right, so
I can see
I'll send this up closer. All I have to do is tap there, and I will type in Diddy. If you hold up your phone when I send, and then we'll demonstrate live how fast it is. And this is the initial payment. So the settlement happens in the block, and Diddy will pop up with there we go. And I just hit next. Oh, yeah, I know I've got to actually put them out. 1 cent. Add note. Just pass that. And see your phone? Has it popped up?
Oh, yes, there you go. I mean, but it's here. Yeah, it's right at the top. It's this one, and I know you can't see it very clearly, but literally Joelle has just sent me 1 cent, so I've just received that straight away. So
she doesn't have to wait for block to confirm to send that on.
So it's like zero comms, isn't it? Zero confirmations.
So I could send her $10, £10. She could spend that straight away, and then eventually when a block confirms, and then it does all the settlement in all the transactions that have happened.
So I'm gonna send this back to you, Joelle, because usually it makes it's really hard to do it.
It's hard to do when you're trying to turn it.
Yeah. But this is the beauty of BSV, is the fact that actually, I mean, the blocks are like 4 gig blocks at the moment, so it's not stuck on 1 meg, and there's like 100,000 transactions a second at the moment, and there's a lot of this is a misinformation thing. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah, it's arrived already. As you can see at the top with the green dash there, that was 2, and then the one on top is from. But very interesting thing useful thing about PayMail as well as a business. I've had plenty of times with the membership club, people pay me wrong amount or they've changed their mind or whatever. With a PayMail thing, if I'm paying you in a long code and standard long code, then I say, oh, can I have a refund? And then you've got to then turn around and ask me for my deposit address. And as it's, like a shop, you'd have to ask for bank details and whatnot. But with this, I can just see, oh, did he send me money? I'll just send it back to her.
Yeah, and
you
I mean,
you
can download the receipt as well, and that and then you can see your what's on chain, check on the blockchain as well, so you can see that instantly inside the wallet. And because obviously it's just a triple ledger accounting system, but the fact that it's so sorry you can't see that.
Up the phone very well.
The fact that it's sort of light reflecting off it, the fact that it's instant transactions, and that's the same if I send it over to Nigeria. That's it. It's like literally a couple of seconds.
You can split the transactions with this one. You can see I've sent the transaction, goes clear to myself and the second person there. So you can split the transaction. You could send in a single transaction to like 100 different people, a penny each, and it will go straight away to 100 different people, and it will cost you a fraction of a cent in total in mining fees.
I suppose,
actually, sorry, correction, Handcast pay all the mining fees. So normally it would cost you 100 of a cent or so, depending on the wallet you use. But with Handcast, they pay the mining fee, so it wouldn't cost you anything for that one.
So, I mean, the technology has advanced considerably with basically Craig being able to implement exactly the things that he wanted to implement on the network in the first place. I also wondered, though, because obviously you know about Bitcoin, was it the fact that, like, did the Genesis block, did that appeal to you because it was called the Genesis block?
No, not.
I always wondered, because
I used to teach computer science, so I tried to keep at least a vague interest on what's going on in tech, but it's still far too niche. It needs to get more mainstream before people can use it for freedom and privacy.
Agree. I mean, it has been suppressed, and I think one of the with digital identity as well, and I understand completely where you're coming from, because I asked Craig this question: did you invent Bitcoin with CBDCs in mind, central bank digital currencies? And his answer was a flat out no, I didn't even consider that. But one of the things about the digital identity is that you are able to actually take back your identity and own that yourself. And then, you're self-sovereign in the respect of the fact that, Facebook, you join Facebook, they claim copyright ownership of your work. Well, you can just at least, I mean, you know all this anyway, so self-sovereign, and you can, the data is yours, it belongs to you. So in the respect, it's your identity has been stolen and captured by these big companies, whereas on the blockchain, there are pros and cons, but you do get to be able to own your identity again. And I think that's a wonderful thing, but I think a lot of it does come to legislation, and I'm not sure we can trust the WEF to have our best interests at heart. In fact, I kind of know that we can't. So, but I know that you've only got a couple of minutes left, Kelvin, so I want to give the floor back over to you and hear what you think of the important considerations that somebody needs to take and look at when it comes to Bitcoin. I mean, the other thing is Bitcoin SV is a commodity. It's not a cryptocurrency. So they are completely different things in that respect.
I think my concern would be these digital IDs that people are linking to currencies, and the idea that governments will use our IDs in ways that we haven't even foreseen yet. And that is to be as much as possible. You're right in that a lot of it comes down to legislation. I do feel like I own my profile on Facebook and Twitter and stuff because of the new GDPR regulations, which are annoying in some regards, but at the same time, I know I can download all of my data on there and remove my account and I'll still have everything. I am very fearful of a central digital ID, which I think a lot of governments want to implement, because once they've got the central digital IDs, they can have the central digital bank currencies, and then they can control where your money is spent, what it's spent on, and not just your money, but what service you're able to access. It's all very utilitarian and very dystopian.
Because it's very CCP, to be honest with you. It is
very CCP. We need to make sure these technologies are independent of governments as much as possible, and that people are... Go on, decentralized.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add that in 2015, I used to have meetings with HM Treasury, and it was back in 2015 that I first brought up CBDCs and the potentials and such. I'm pro CBDCs, but also there are potential for bad CBDCs. And
they will bring in a new serfdom. It's the new modern slavery.
If it's done badly, then yes, I absolutely agree with you. It will be 1984 absolutely. But there is ways to do it which will make governments more honest and transparent, and that will bring in a better future.
Yeah, you see, that I really agree with. I think it would be a great thing if we can actually, if they used it and it is used for basically keeping an eye on what they're doing and what they're spending, and a transparency and openness in that respect would be an absolutely phenomenal thing. But yeah.
What it will be is actually steak is bad for your health. You shouldn't be able to buy steak. You can no longer use this currency to buy steak. Or actually, you haven't paid your bill this month, so you can't spend money on fags and alcohol. It will be a way of controlling the citizens. It will never be a way of controlling the people in power.
It'd be nice, though, wouldn't it? If it was, it would. I mean, I do have a question though, because I did wonder. I mean, do you think there's any way that Bitcoin SV can be used to benefit the Anglican Church in any way?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I actually think we need to take a step back from technology for a bit. I think we've made so much progress in the last 100 years, more so than probably the rest of humanity combined in terms of engineering and technology. And we're rushing too far ahead. AI, transhumanism, and digital bank currencies, all of this stuff is like end time stuff. I think we have to be so cautious on the speed at which we implement it, because it could be the end of us as people.
I felt that about the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, to be honest with you, when I look back on the history of how things progressed, is like you say, the speed of everything is we need to take into consideration what the longer term effects are of that. So I am extremely aware that you do need to go because you do have another podcast. I also thank you so much for giving of your time today, and I probably bamboozled you a little bit by hijacking you and bringing Joel in and talking about Bitcoin, but it's just wanted to sort of show you a different side of what is actually in the mainstream and what people kind of believe about Bitcoin. The takeaway I really want you to sort of know is that Bitcoin SV is the Bitcoin that was designed in the white paper, and it is true to the white paper. Craig did not even consider CBDCs when he actually invented it. But do you have any final closing words, Calvin?
Just great to see you again, Diddy, and lovely to meet you, Joel, and thank you both very much.
That's quite a pleasure.
I hope to meet you again sometime. So if you're ever in Nottingham, I'll try and gate crash again. And enjoy your holidays at home. And yes, please, your homework from me today, Reverend Calvin Robinson, is to look into Richard Sterene from 1596 to 1683, who was the King's Bishop from Mansfield.
Love that. Thank you very much. God bless you.